And this quote, again, going back to, again, the message that is conveyed in the Lord of the Redemption through many ancient sacred texts. I will bring them into the splendid light of those who love my holy name. And I will place each of them on a throne of glory peculiarly his own. Righteous is the judgment of God. And as you progress through at the feet of the masters, there's just a wonderful painting of a Jewish rabbi, to represent many of the Jewish rabbis that have come and gone throughout the years. And there's a few quotes from the Zohar, which are some of the great rabbis of ancient memory. Ye truly virtuous, enter and see, for permission is given you to enter as far as the place where the curtain is hung. Happy is your lot. Of course, they're speaking of the interior of the temple where only the priests could go. The temple where the curtain was hung, that was only certain high priests could go there. When the Holy One created man, he set in him all the images of the supernal mysteries of the world above and all the images of the lower mysteries of the world below, and all are designed in man who stands in the image of God. Our next master is not someone that everyone always thinks of when you think of a master, because people think, what a sad story. And they don't realize, oh, this is a master. And this is the story of Job. But here are some of the words attributed to Job, who was truly a master because he retained his faith in God and was able to stand strong through the most vicious sufferings, which many of us could not endure. And Job speaks ironically of out-of-body travel when he says, in a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instruction. People think out-of-body travel is a new thing, and it's not.
That reminds me of a doctor that I knew of a long time ago. And he spoke of people who had a lot of medical issues, a lot of health issues. And he said he would just look at them and go, you are one of the healthiest people I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, if I had like 1/10 of like all the stuff that you have going on, I'd be gone. But you are so healthy that you can withstand all of these things that are.
Well, and Mother Teresa would say to people that God must trust you a great deal to, be willing to give you such great suffering,
That's great.
And one other thing that Job would say is, which is the way to the dwelling place of the light? And where is the abode of darkness? That you may take them to their boundaries and set them on their homeward paths. A statement of the purification pathway from thousands of years ago. And then we enter into Baruch Spinoza, who was a Jewish philosopher. And He struggled, as a master, trying to figure out where he stood with what he believed. He who lives under the guidance of reason endeavors as far as possible to render back love or kindness for other men's hatred, anger, contempt, etc. toward him. It's from the Ethics of Spinoza. Most of the things that we have from him were from a book he wrote called The Ethics of Spinoza.
He was just someone, it seemed like he was trying to practicalize the religion as opposed and get away from superstition.
He was. And that's where, he kind of struggled a bit, We should in the same way reflect on courage as a means of overcoming fear. The ordinary dangers of life should frequently be brought to mind and imagined, together with the means whereby, through readiness of resource and strength of mind, we can avoid and overcome them. So what he's talking about there is discipline. He's talking about the practices of being in a state of preparation for the unpredictabilities of life, and actually doing a daily practice that disciplines the mind to be ready for them. Another great Jewish philosopher, more famous, was Moses Maimonides. Do not consider it proof just because it is written in books. For a liar who will deceive with his tongue will not hesitate to do the same with his pen. And how many people realize this is the source of this very famous saying we still talk about and use all the time today? Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. That was Moses Maimonides who said that. The risk of a wrong decision is preferable to the terror of indecision. So another Jewish philosopher, Moses Mendelssohn. Divine religion does not prod men with an iron rod. It guides them with bands of love. It draws no avenging sword, dispenses no temporal goods, assumes no right to any earthly possessions, and claims no external power over the mind. Its weapons are reason and persuasion. Its strength is the divine power of truth. Time is a part of eternity and of the same peace with it. When he wrote that, he was having a very transcendental. We're going to go through some people, a lot of rabbis and some other people here, the Jewish. Not as well known, but well known to the Jewish people, maybe not as well known to the general public. So Rebecca Gratz was the founder of the first Jewish Sunday school and orphanage in America in the 1900s. If I had been provided with agreeable intelligence, you would have heard from me long ago, but to repeat the same dull talk could afford you little satisfaction, and therefore I have been silent.
That's great. So it never would have happened if she didn't have that philosophy.
Exactly. And when you think about her time that she accomplished a great deal in her period of time where it was harder for women to do that. So Rabbi Joseph Kahaman. So they called him the Panavazir Rav. He was extremely careful to avoid speaking any words of the Zionist language. So, you know, in some Jewish circles, depending on which circles, um, they will speak mostly ancient or modern Hebrew. And in his case, he spoke ancient Hebrew and would try to stay away from the modern Hebrew, which is the Zionist language. So there's a little anecdote about him. Once Rabbi Ozer Yonah Kushner, a teacher in a yeshiva in Miami Beach, asked the Ponvejer Rav to give a lecture in his yeshiva. The students of this yeshiva did not know Yiddish, and the Ponvejer Rav did not speak English, so they were in a quandary as to how he should communicate with them. Finally, it was decided he would speak in classical Hebrew, the holy tongue. So he began in halting Hebrew, but after a minute, he switched to his native Yiddish for the remainder of the lecture. Afterwards, Rabbi Kushner asked him why he'd done this. The Rav replied, I am careful to avoid using any word that was invented by the Zionists. Someone from our community published a dictionary indicating that words may be used, but it is very hard to remember, and it was taking too long, so I had no choice but to speak in Yiddish. So I guess, you know, it was a big deal. You know, it's kind of similar to some of the issues that came out of Catholicism when they switched to the native tongues from the Latin, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some schools of Judaism where it's still very important to use the original classical Hebrew. And so just a little anecdotal, humorous story. And you know, the next one is Rabbi Eleazar Kaller, and he actually is one of the writers of the liturgical poems in the Jewish prayer book. And you know, a lot of people don't understand that the liturgy of the hours in the Catholic tradition is an extension of the prayer of the hours that began in the Jewish tradition. So all of these things are intricately woven together. And so when you read the Jewish prayer book, remember Rabbi Eleazar, who was one of the great authors of many of those prayers. Then we have Rabbi Elio Toph. And one of the things that he would say was, the heart opens itself to the hope that the misfortunes of the past will be replaced by fruitful dialogue. I think we can all appreciate that. And the next master is Rabbi Barbat. He was a Torah teacher, and I tried very hard to find something that he might have spoken, but as a Torah teacher, he would teach the 5 books of Moses to his students diligently and faithfully throughout his life. Rabbi Karabi ben Ishay, also known as the Chofetz Chaim, he personally funded the publishing of his own books, refusing sponsorship or charity, and any income from those books were always distributed to the poor. The Chofetz Chaim was also responsible for most of the writings on Lashon Hara, Recluse. He wrote a book called Echoes in the Heavenly Court, which is a beautiful book, hard to come by these days. I'm very lucky to have a copy, about the importance of speech, using our words carefully. Chofetz Chaim is one of those truly, incandescent masters who really stands tall across all faiths, because his teaching is something that all of us require. And so he's very important. Another work of his, the seminal work, the Ben Ish Chai. And he would say in this book, excuse me, may your home be open wide. May the poor be members of your household. A person generous of heart seeks to have the hungry enter his home and satiated. You are therefore commanded that the poor be members of your household. This refers to those members of the household who are in charge of your property and your kitchen, who dwell in your home as tenants. Choose people who were once poor, who are familiar with the hardships of poverty, whether with hunger or with deprivation that affect the body's health. How harsh and bitter these lacks can be for the needy person, and leave them helpless, so that they may be filled with pity for the needy, who are forced to knock at your door. Respond to their plea and give them what they require from the food and drink with the house that has been blessed, and not send them away empty-handed. And this comes from the Mishnah. And Mishnahs are teachings on the scriptures from Hasdei Evot, from that seminal work, Ben Ish Chai, from Rabbi Karabi Ben Ishai. And our next master, Rabbi Satmar, from the Satmar lineage, which is actually a lineage of rabbis that is cross-generational. They are characterized by a very religious, extremely strict religious adherence, complete rejection of modern culture, fierce anti-Zionism. They sponsor comprehensive education and media systems in Yiddish. They use Yiddish as their primary language. And they also had the Central Rabbinical Congress. And they're not very, they don't write a lot, so we weren't able to get any words. So the next masters are the Talmudists. And these are those who follow the writings of the Talmud very strictly. And they have some interesting things to share. And I pulled out some of their writings on the uniqueness and sanctity of human life to share. So they say, this doctrine of equality does not assert that individuals duplicate one another. A man, the Talmud explains, strikes many coins from one die, and they are all alike. The Holy One, blessed be he, however, strikes every person from the die of the first man, but no one resembles another. Their uniqueness is mental as well as physical, and they all have a special function to fulfill in the realization of the cosmic purpose. A person thus has a right to feel that, quote, the universe was created for his sake, unquote, for he has a unique role to play in it, so that the cosmic scheme will be incomplete without him. And that is one of the places from which Talmudists and Jewish derive the same belief that many religions hold of the supreme sanctity of all human life. So then we move on to the Jewish Kabbalists. And here's an interesting statement that I think reflects really what Kabbalism is doing, but I don't know if all Kabbalists realize that's what Kabbalism is about, but we're just going to go there, right? So this brings us to a further aspect of the doctrine, which is also the most important for the system of practical theosophy. The process in which God conceives, brings forth, and develops himself does not reach its final conclusion in God. Certain parts of the process of restitution are allotted to man. Not all the lights which are held in captivity by the powers of darkness are set free by their own efforts. It is man who adds the final touch to the divine countenance. It is he who completes the enthronement of God, the king and the mystical creator of all things. In his own kingdom of heaven, it is he who perfects the maker of all things. In certain spheres of being, divine and human existence are intertwined. The intrinsic extra-mundane process of tikkun, which is symbolically described as the birth of God's personality, corresponds to the process of mundane history. The historical process and its innermost soul, the religious act of the Jew, prepare the way for the final restitution of all scattered and exiled lights and sparks. Does that remind you of anything from the Mysteries of the Redemption by chance? The scattering, the multiplicities. And it's preparing the way for the restitution of those multiplicities, the exiled lights, the exiled sparks. And so, interestingly here, ironically, a statement made here that sounds ironically very Christian, which is, not all the lights which are held in captivity by the powers of darkness are set free by their own efforts. It is man who adds the final touch to the divine countenance. And this is actually something you don't expect to hear from a Jewish text, because it has much more of a Christian feel to its inner meaning. But again, this is the whole initiations into the mysteries, the rites of the passage, and that's what Kabbalah is. It's, hey, the gathering of the multiplicities. The multiplicities are the scattering. The scattering, what is the scattering? It's all of these individual existences, these individual identities that are embodied in many human forms, which are isolated by the nature of our inability to think them into unity. And it is the work of the Kabbalist, the work of the initiations, or work of the rites, to bring the oneness, the unity back to the scattering.
It's interesting because it reminds me of some of Carl Jung's work. Really? Yeah, with the archetypes, and that we have unlimited multiplicities of archetypes within us. But most of us, being that there's an infinite amount, but most of us live within 6, 7 of them, and that's our whole window of perception. Yep. That we live through, not knowing that we're all of them and one. Yeah. But also, it's like these 10 Sephiroths of the Kabbalah are really just like different windows of perception.
Exactly.
That we see life through.
Different windows of perception, exactly. Very much so. So we enter now into some of the masters of the ancient Egyptian path. So we start out with Thoth, and we're going to talk here from some of the emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, some
You
of my
know,
favorite works of,
when I got the, I call it the Egyptian there,
yeah.
the little pharaoh there, uh, which I just came across in a very unusual, mystical way. But I also received a book by investigative mythologist William Henry, Cloak of the Illuminati, and he basically just described exactly what that is. You know, and I was just like,
Ah,
what? Like somebody who is connected with mystery schools from ancient Egypt knew what the heck was going on, whoever made that, right? But right at that point, it wasn't a dream. I was working at I'm playing around a lot with the International Academy of Consciousness at the time. And so I was going kind of deep into that work. And then there was a place where I had my computer and I did a lot of writing and I studied a lot and I wrote a lot and then I'd put it on my computer and I did a lot of research on the computer, but I was like going crazy. I was doing it like nonstop. And then all of a sudden, Thoth, whatever you want to say, comes and he sat down where my keyboard was, you know, and he put this thing down right on where I do the typing. I don't know what it was, if it was like something that you're writing on, but it was really energetically charged and it was not like a dream. It was my room. Thoth came in there, sat this thing down, and so I don't know, it was a very powerful thing for me.
well, yeah. And, in the initiations and the mysteries, Thoth is usually involved, as well as, Hermes, Nefertiti. And so it's interesting because regardless of what your own individual, propensities or familiarities may be with, many people will find that when they go into the initiations, they will have some type of, ancient Egyptian passages. And I don't know if this is just because that's the way the initiations play out, or if it's because, many of us have those ancient Egyptian roots, or both, you know, probably a little bit of both, you know. but um, but yeah, Thoth was presented to me during the initiations into the mysteries as, the keeper of the gateway between worlds, the veils. And it's interesting when you look at the writings from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, because many of them seem to, kind of direct in that direction. But, also the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean paint him as quite the mystic, as a very, very profound mystic. So he says, "Know ye, O my brother, that fear is an obstacle great. Be master of all in the brightness. The shadow will soon disappear. Hear ye and heed my wisdom. The voice of light is clear. Seek not the valley of shadow, and light only will appear. List ye, O man, to the depth of my wisdom. Speak I of knowledge hidden from man. Far have I been on my journeys through space-time, even to the end of the space of this cycle. Found I there the great barrier holding man from leaving this cycle. Glimpsed I the hounds of the barrier, lying in wait for he who would pass them. In that space where time exists not, faintly I sensed the guardians of cycles. Followed I then the path to the star planes, followed I then the pathway to light. Deep into Earth's heart, I followed the pathway, learning the secrets below as above. And so we see going all the way back. It's nothing new under the sun here. This purification pathway, this path of the mystics, is really quite the same. When you look across these religious barriers, they're similar. You see, they're so similar you could probably not tell who was saying what if you didn't say who was saying it, right?
Fully.
And then Hermes, who sometimes is, linked as being with Thoth or the same as Thoth, and we just really just don't know. But we have Hermes separate just because we can, and since it's not known for sure. And these are from the Divine Pomander. And if thou wilt even break the whole, and see those things that are without the world, if there be anything without thou mayest, behold how great power, how great swiftness thou hast. Command it to fly into heaven, and it will not need no wings, neither shall anything hinder it, not the fire of the sun, not the ether, not the turning of the spheres, not the bodies of any other stars, but cutting through all, it will fly up to the last and furthest body. Again, Hermes is laying out the purification pathway. And then we have Nefertiti, who ironically I had the honor of seeing last night. She was trying to talk to me about some something mysterious from her time that she says is unknown to us today, a cult of Nefertiti. And it was presented to me as a very holy thing. It was very beautiful. And it was very awe-inspiring and wonderful. And it was in this valley of texts, ancient sacred texts. And I was taken specifically first to the Pahlavi texts of the ancient Zoroastrians. And then I was taken over here, and there was just this refined gold where Nefertiti was. And when she recognized that I had recognized her, she smiled and was very happy that I realized it was her. And she wanted me to discover more. So more to come on that someday. We'll have to do some research and continue with that. But Nefertiti, there's not much that we have that's actually attributed to her, but I found a couple of things attributed to her. I wonder if our names determine our destiny, or if destiny leads us to choose certain names. And another thing attributed to Nefertiti was you can't change the desert. You can only take the fastest course. But, Nefertiti was a woman. She was married to Amenhotep. She was the mother of King Tut. And we don't have much that has been recorded of her, just that she was extremely beautiful. And I find it fascinating because even from the very beginning of my journeys, when I was given my wings, when I was told to come forth for thy wings and the initiations into the mysteries, I was given this Nefertiti statue. And I actually have one. I'll go grab it real quick. Be right back. Very small. I'll show it to you. So it was very much like this. And this, I just picked it up, a few years ago at a thrift store. Saw it and I was like, oh, that looks just like the one I was given when I was told to come forth for my wings. And I never understood why. Why was I given something like this with a bust of Nefertiti when I was given my angel wings? And so interestingly, last night here again, there's Nefertiti, and it was shown to me as there being something, and it was definitively clear that it was something that was forgotten to humankind. It's not something that we have in our record of humanity about her and about the cult of Nefertiti that she made reference to, that she said is no longer known about. That was important and significant, I guess. And so I think there's still mysteries for us to unearth.
Well, often what they would do as well is they'd try to destroy everything about something that they want to keep away from people.
Well, and they certainly did that with Amenhotep, because Amenhotep had turned the Egyptians away from the worship of the multiple gods, and he was the first monotheist, so he turned the Egyptians to worship Ra, the sun god Ra. And then when his reign ended, they literally tried to obliterate his memory from Egypt. And, they desecrated many of the statues of Amenhotep and the memorials. And so the histories are, so it's very clearly there that they did try to alter that history, but it seems there may be more there that they did destroy that we just don't know. And it was.
And also there's been evidence too, like there's a bunch of hieroglyphics that are written on a wall, and then there's a place in Egypt, I can't remember where it is exactly, where some chipped off, because often they would build a temple like on top of a temple, or just cover up something with something else. And so, or they figured it was tens of thousands of years older than the text that you see on the outside.
That's true. They did do that a lot. And so I know they did that with Amenhotep. And then, after King Tut died, he died very young as well. So
and I also
a
noticed
lot of things got lost.
In Egypt too, it's, as I noticed in Cambodia too, when I was going around to the temples, is that you can totally tell that some of the ages of these temples are from completely different eras.
Really?
In Egypt, some of the more common temples may be much younger, perhaps, than some other ones where it's like, what? Same in Cambodia. Like I would go to, some of the major temples, and then I'd go off the beaten path, and all of a sudden it's like you see something like, whoa. And it's supposed to be like the same, but it's like, or a little bit older, but it's more advanced as well. It's like, well, this is way more advanced than those little rocks that we're using over there. Like, this is, what the heck? I kind of noticed the same thing when I was in South America too, or even in Central America with some of these, the technology. It's like the technology was at a much higher level, and then instead of, things are supposed to evolve, but things de-evolved from a higher ability and capability and artisanness and craftsmanship and creativity, and just got worse. I think it has to do with those cycles that we go through, as well as, we're cruising through space and through the different consciousness cycles that we go through.
Oh, I definitely think that's true as well. So
Thoth is known to be
I think there's more mysteries though to all of this than than we have, that we still have. And we know we've lost a lot just in Alexandria. One of the neat things though is, one of the things I definitely learned in the Palace of Ancient Knowledge, nothing is lost. So, whatever did get destroyed at the Library of Alexandria is still in existence there, the Palace of Ancient Knowledge. But in terms of what we have for our conscious memory here, on Earth, I do think we probably have some things that might have been pivotal and important that we no longer have. And last night was definitely a case where that was being shown to me. And so I guess we will see where that leads, huh?
You've also had some experiences where you've gone back to Atlantis, right? And that must have been quite a ways back.
Yes, well, Atlantis and Lemuria.
And Lemuria too. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, and yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if, how we have been told that there may be, more epics to the earth than we're aware of, in terms of some people have found evidence of previous potential nuclear blasts where we may have blasted ourselves back to the Stone Age a few times. I wouldn't be surprised if that's happened here, based on some of the experiences that I have had. And then, we also have as well, some of the neat experiences that I had as well were when I was taken to meet some of the galactic archaeologists who are translating galactic ancient sacred texts. We forget that, we're not the only ones writing these things. You know what I mean?
And
And
there
I was
is
so excited because it's like, wow, I
sweet.
want to read those.
Yeah.
And I
We're,
think that there's more for us to still discover. We are
yeah.
definitely have not hit the wall on mysteries, that's for sure.
And then if we look at galactic mysteries like what you're talking about, we're just on that one arm, of the galaxy, and we're like relatively young compared to if we go closer to the center of the galaxy and the origination. So our sense of time, and as we're, many of us souls are just kind of, we're kind of in this samsara, we're in this, continual cycle of, rebirth and birth and going back and then coming back again. But so our sense of time, we're just this little tiny thimble of a window that we're seeing all of potentiality and time and dimensions and such.
Yeah. Well, and ironically, that is an excellent point to bring in this next reading, which is about Isis. It's about the Bembine table of Isis. It's from a manuscript by Thomas Taylor about the Bembine table of Isis, because the next master is Isis from Egypt. And it talks about this whole, mystery religion thing, the initiations into the mysteries in the Egypt, Awesome. It says Plato was initiated into the greater mysteries at the age of 49. The initiation took place in one of the subterranean halls of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The Isaiah table formed the altar before which the divine Plato stood and received that which was always his, but which the ceremony of the mysteries enkindled and brought from its dormant state. With this ascent, after 3 days in the great hall, he was received by the Hierophant of the pyramid. The Hierophant was seen only by those who had passed the 3 days, the 3 degrees, the 3 dimensions, and given verbally the highest esoteric teachings, each accompanied with its appropriate symbol. After a further 3 months' sojourn in the halls of the pyramid, the initiate Plato was sent out in the world to do the work of the great order, as Pythagoras and Orpheus had been before him. Neat, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So our next master, the oracle at Delphi. Over the entrance to the temple at Delphi was a famous inscription, "Know thyself." And another quote, taking that just a little further, says that knowing thyself isn't a journey to a fixed destination.